And now your host, Richard Thomas.
Hello, and welcome to It's a Miracle. You know, there are many definitions for the word miracle, but for this show, we've decided to focus on just one: beating all the odds. In each of our stories, a person is faced with a situation that is so daunting, so beyond the realm of possibility, that to overcome it would require a miracle. We begin with what one paramedic has described as the most classic struggle between life and death that he's ever witnessed. The annual Ridge to River Relay attracts thousands of spectators and participants to Wenatchee, Washington every spring.
Hey guys, I want to do some canoeing before it gets dark, so yeah.
In April of 2000, Reuben Andrews, Maria Danzer, and Carly Boom arrived with some other friends to join in on the fun.
It was supposed to be a stage race. There was like a ski and a run and a bicycle canoe. I was real excited to I was going to do the biking and part of the canoe.
We had a lot of fun, and we were talking and joking. Since we had lots of time, we thought we'd go canoeing because it would be fun.
Oh my gosh, it would be so much fun, Carly. You're going to love it.
At first, Carly hesitated. She had little experience canoeing, but in the end, she decided to give it a try.
You'll love it.
Since Carly didn't have as much experience, she was in the middle, and I'd had a little bit more than Reuben, so I was in the back. The river was really high, so in some ways it made going down easier, and in some ways it made the current a lot stronger.
And the strong current soon began to cause problems.
We fell over and tipped the canoe, so then we had to swim to a little sandbar.
I was just amazed how cold it was and how fast the water really was when you're not in the boat. It was kind of a startling situation.
After their spill, Carly was reluctant to get back into the canoe. But with no other way to shore, the group once again headed downstream.
When we got about halfway around the corner, we could see a bridge up ahead with the pylon right in the middle, right where we were in the river. When we started paddling towards shore, it didn't work. It just turned the canoe.
When we hit the pillar, I tried to push off, thinking we'd just like bounce off. And as soon as I touched it, I just heard a big bang. It was a canoe just collapsing and wrapping around the pillar.
Me and Reuben got sucked out the sides, but since Carly was right there against the pylon, it just trapped her in there.
In the next instant, the tremendous force of the river wrapped the canoe around the bridge pylon and pulled the young girl under.
Where's Carly? Reuben, where's Carly? She's still trapped in the canoe!
I'll go get help.
I just had a moment there where I realized Carly was still in there. I just kind of sat there going, oh my God.
Mike Harum, a Chelan County Sheriff Rescue Instructor, was conducting a training session upriver from the accident.
Chelan Station to Water Rescue, please come in.
The dispatch had given us a call that a boat had capsized in the area of the Sleepy Hollow Bridge and was trapped against the pillar. We got there within about a minute or so. We actually could see the person under the water there. There was a hand between the ridge of the boat and the pillar. It was trapped.
But reaching her would be extremely dangerous.
Because of the high water, the currents will actually pull you into the pillar and potentially could sink the boat. So you're kind of at the mercy of the water.
Carly's friends watched from shore as Mike made another attempt to get within reach of the canoe.
I saw them trying to pull on the canoe, but the current was so strong, it had to just go by. They could slow down and then try pulling on it, but they couldn't stop.
It was real frustrating. When you're watching a real close friend of yours not knowing if they're gonna make it, it was just gut-wrenching, you know, and you don't really know what to think.
As precious minutes ticked by, Mike's attempts to free Carly continued to fail.
We were kind of frantic at that point because, you know, what are we going to do now?
We're going to have to get a winch line and get a hold of that.
So I went to the shore and contacted the fire department and explained that I would need the winch to pull the boat up. I think most everybody at that point felt that it was more of a recovery than a rescue.
Just as they'd given up hope, paramedic Sean Ballard arrived on the scene.
The person had been in the water at least 20 minutes at that point in time. And, you know, after 10 or 15 minutes, you know, he's pretty much lost hope. But in cold water, we know if the body temperature drops fast enough, that the person has a longer time.
Okay, Mike, this cold water is not a recovery. We need to keep going.
I said, if you can get this person out by 30 minutes after, we still have a chance.
That gave the rescue team less than 15 minutes to pull Carly from the water. For now, all Sean and his partner, Carla Render, could do was watch helplessly.
As I was standing out there watching everything, my mind kind of went to the past. I have a sister that was 17, and she drowned in the Salmon River in Idaho. It just made me really want to give her a chance. I didn't want any siblings that she had to have to feel what I felt. I didn't want her parents to feel that. I just want a chance to give her a chance. That's all I could think over and over and over.
Sheriff's office has a boat down there. We're going to drop the winch down underneath the guardrail.
As everyone on shore held their breath, Mike Harram and his crew struggled to set Carly free.
We got the cable down over the side and hooked it to the boat.
They got on the radio and they started pulling with the winch. And we'd given them till 30 minutes after, about 3:30. When I looked down at my watch, it was 28 minutes after, and I thought, okay, you know, we're gonna make it. So they started pulling, and all of a sudden the cable ripped through the boat. And the boat went right back around the pillar. And I was thinking, you know, we're still within our time limit, but all of a sudden they were back to ground zero. They started to pull with the winch, and then they rammed the boat up against it and started pushing with the boat at the same time. In the combination of those two, we saw the nose start creeping out of the water.
It was just incredible. I think the water was running like 8,000 gallons per second. So I just again pushed as hard as I could.
The extra effort paid off as Carly finally dislodged from the pillar and floated downstream to another rescue boat. But by the time they arrived on shore, paramedic Sean Ballard feared they were too late.
She was limp and cold, cyanotic, you know, which is that kind of bluish look people get, and just pale as a ghost. It's the look like this person's dead.
Although they knew the odds were stacked against them, Sean and Carla Render moved into action.
Another strap. Right here.
I remember thinking she's tall like my sister is tall. And then the next thing I thought was, she's not going to die today. I'm not letting her die.
Okay, Terry, let's start compressions. So we hooked up warm IV fluids on her and started seeing what we had. No breathing, no signs of life. Basically, her heart had stopped. There was no electrical activity, nothing. Okay, we got VF. We're gonna need a shocker here, guys. And then we gave her some electricity of our own. And after that, all of a sudden, we saw a very, very slow complex on her heart monitor. Hey, we got something. And we thought, gosh, we've got a chance. Something's there.
Alex in Washington.
They immediately reported the change in Carly's condition to emergency room physician Dr. Mark Shipman, who was standing by at Central Washington Hospital.
With that teenage drowning victim I called you about earlier.
They're calling us, telling us they have a patient. They don't have a victim.
We're into a sinus rhythm now with a very weak pulse.
And incredibly, they have a patient who has a pulse.
But even a pulse was no guarantee that Carly would survive.
She was 72 degrees when we got to the emergency room. You know, when we see somebody that's severely hypothermic, you know, they're in the 80s. So to see somebody who's at 72 degrees, I mean, it's unheard of. Here we go, 1, 2, 3, over we go. All right.
Dr. Shipman and his team were equally amazed by the condition of the young woman placed in their care.
I have never seen anybody survive an incident like this. And I'm there looking at a little girl who's dead, but now she's living again, and I'm sorry, maybe we can save her.
I've got a core temperature of 72.
The first challenge for the medical team was to warm Carly's blood and raise her temperature internally. But they lacked the proper equipment, a heart-lung machine.
When you have one of those machines, you can effectively warm up their own blood. When you warm a patient up rapidly from the outside, they die, and you can't resuscitate them.
We have a dialysis machine coming.
The medical team would have to improvise.
It turns out that on a dialysis machine, you can also take somebody's blood and heat it up.
The gamble paid off, but just as quickly, Carly's heart stopped beating again.
Can you start CPR, please?
Okay, we've got no pulse.
We need to start. All
right, we got VF.
That's shocker.
The first thing we try is defibrillation, even though we know that in hypothermic victims, many times it just doesn't work.
Up there.
And lo and behold, it works. First time, she's got a pulse again. That happened twice.
You got that catheter in her bladder? This was one of the most classic struggles of life and death I've ever seen. It was just constantly the Grim Reaper, you know, pulling at her feet, you know, and the doctor's pulling her hands. And it was just amazing to watch.
While the heroic efforts of the doctors and nurses continued, 200 miles away in Tenino, Washington, Barbara and Phil Boone received the phone call every parent dreads.
Hello? I got a phone call from a deputy sheriff, and he just said that Carly was in a bad accident and that we should come over as soon as possible.
I couldn't even picture the scene. I just knew that my daughter was in trouble. I was crying, I was shaking. We were quiet most of the time. We had our own thoughts.
As we were driving along, I started doing a lot of praying, and I felt the overwhelming urge to thank God for the wonderful 16 years that He had given us with her.
By the time the Boones arrived at the hospital, Carly's condition had stabilized, but the prognosis was not good.
When we arrived in the hospital, I began to feel really numb because I didn't know what to expect, and I was afraid to hear.
First of all, she is holding her own.
As I was listening to the doctors report one bad bit of news after another, I actually began feeling faint. They told us there was kidney failure, liver damage, and the neurologist told us that 45 minutes without oxygen makes the brain pretty damaged.
They want you to stay outside the room for now.
Seeing Carly like that was really hard to fathom, because just 12 hours earlier she was alive and joking and friendly and moving all over the place. And here she was just absolutely still. All I knew is I wanted to hold her hand and talk to her and try to reassure her that Mom and Dad were there and we were going to do everything we could for her.
As I looked at my daughter, my mother's heart just broke. It was a very helpless feeling. There was absolutely nothing I could do. She was not stable enough for them to even predict that she would be alive in the morning.
There was long-term doubts that Carly would ever be anywhere near herself. It was all dire predictions, and there was a lot of doubt.
Only time would tell if the young daughter they knew still lived inside her body. Meanwhile, Carly was kept heavily sedated to allow her brain time to heal.
Well, we're still getting reactive pupils. Marcia, let's go ahead and turn off her propofol.
And 3 days later, everyone held their breath as the neurologist brought Carly out of her deep sleep.
I was there when she opened her eyes for the first time.
Doctor, look.
Carly, can you hear me?
Carly.
And at one point, the neurologist said, "Can you see your mother, Carly?" And Carly lifted up her hand and waved.
Hi, sweetie.
It was this huge gleam of hope. She's injured, but her brain is functioning. She recognizes me, she can move. There's a spark there.
I was ecstatic. There's no two ways about it. I was just floating on cloud 9. I just knew that she was going to do better than they had thought that she may.
The days that followed confirmed everyone's faith, and after 3 weeks of intensive care, Carly was transported to Seattle Children's Hospital for rehabilitation.
I knew it was going to be a lot of work. She had physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. She could not walk.
She began taking little steps and then longer steps, and then fairly soon after that on walking on her own.
Good. Keep it up. That's good. All right.
She surprises us every single day with her recovery and her goals for life.
Feeling okay? Let's put the resistance in.
The miracle of her recovery and just coming back to life. It's a real resurrection story.
I think that I actually survived my accident was very miraculous. It makes me appreciate life a little more, and I feel like I'm improving every day.
Carly, on behalf of Ridge to River, we welcome you, and you'll always be part of this race from now until eternity. Thank you very much.
With her every success, Carly's miraculous story continues to touch everyone involved.
I think the main thing for me is it has brought some peace to my heart over my sister's death, which is why I think I was privileged enough to be a part of all of it, because that was what I needed to have. She actually gave a gift back to me.
My experience has been many, many rescues on the river. I've never seen anybody go through what Carly has gone through and live.
I can only affect the things that are in the scientific realm. But I also am first to admit that there's more to Carly's miraculous survival than just science.
We believe that Carly has such a strong will. She is so tough and so resilient that there was a spark of life in her that could not be extinguished.
I'd become closer to God, so maybe that's why he saved my life. Being alive really is miraculous.
When something is lost, with no hope of ever finding it again, some say it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. Well, our next story does the haystack concept one better, or possibly one worse. You'll understand what I mean when you discover where this impossible, hopeless search took place. Saturday, December 18th, 1999, was the beginning of a perfect winter weekend for most of the residents of Canmore, Canada. But for Dr. Karen Jensen, Saturday would be spent catching up with her personal life after 10 long, hard days on the road.
I had been going through a lot in my life. Nothing in that year remained the same, including my marriage and my work situation, and now I was selling my home. I'd been opening my mail for an hour or two, and I was getting kind of bored with it, and it was a gorgeous day. And so I thought, I'm just going to take some time out and go for a hike.
Before leaving, Karen removed a very precious piece of jewelry.
I have 3 sons, and this ring had 3 diamonds, and the bigger one in the middle represented my eldest, and the 2 on either side represented my twins. I was really protective of my ring, and I didn't want to have it scuffed up or anything if I fell. And so I just put it on the table, along with everything else.
Karen headed outside to escape her mountain of mail. But by the time she returned, one more piece of business had been added to the pile.
Hi, Karen. This is Denise.
When I came back from the hike, there was a message on my machine from Denise, my realtor, saying there was a showing on the house the next day.
Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.
So I proceeded to vacuum the house, clean down the kitchen counters, clean up all the papers that were on the table, and dumped out all the envelopes. As I was taking out the garbage, I put the garbage bag down to put my jacket on, and I just had this nudge that maybe I shouldn't tie the bag in a knot. There was a wide white twist tie on top of the garbage, and I just had this feeling that I should use it. So I undid the knot and put the wide white twist tie on my bag and took it out.
Karen spent the rest of the day working at home, and by the time she went to bed, she was exhausted but unable to sleep.
I was actually woken up by this voice, if you will, that said, "Look for your ring." And I thought, oh yeah, my ring.
When she got up the next morning, Karen began searching for the ring, but it was nowhere to be found.
And it didn't take me long to realize what had happened. I went running out to the dumpster. And when I opened the dumpster, it was empty. It was Sunday. Who dumps garbage on Sunday? And my heart just fell. Oh my God. How could I have thrown this ring out? And how do I go about finding this ring?
But after some thought, she decided to track down the trash site where her garbage had been taken. Her search led her to Canmore waste contractor Ken Podmoroff.
Hello. I get a phone call on a Sunday evening that a lady had thrown out a very expensive diamond ring.
And I was just wondering if there's any suggestions you might have to help me find my bag of garbage.
Well, it's already been pushed into the trailer. So I told her that it had already been dumped in a transfer station and pushed in this huge trailer that's 50 feet long and 8 feet wide and 9 feet high and holds 25 tons of garbage, and I was going to take it to Calgary the next morning. Might be difficult to find it. I didn't think we could find it.
Well, I'm willing to try.
But she was pretty adamant on going to find this ring. Well, if you want to show up here tomorrow at 6 o'clock, we can sure start digging for it. I was thinking this is going to take a lot to go through 25 tons of garbage, but if she has enough courage to do it, then we'll start digging for it, and hopefully we can find it.
Good night, Ken. Thanks again. So I thought, okay, well, I've got my first date all year with Ken at the garbage dump.
Hello?
Later that evening, Karen received another call from her real estate agent, Denise Thompson.
When Karen told me that she was going at 6 in the morning to get in this semi of garbage,
Oh, dear.
I immediately thought, she can't do this by herself. I mean, somebody has to go with her.
Denise, you didn't hear me. And I said, Denise, this is not something you want to do.
She said, are you crazy? I said, maybe, but I'm going, and I'll pick you up at 6 in the morning.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Denise. Good night.
The odds of finding a diamond ring in 25 tons of garbage are slim and none. I didn't say that to Karen. I just was going for moral support.
That night, Karen Jensen had a very strange dream.
The dream said that your bag is in the first section of the truck on the left-hand side, midway down, 2.5 feet under. And I went, oh, okay, this I will not forget. So I got up in the morning and remembered my dream map.
Morning, Denise.
An hour later, Denise arrived at Karen's home on schedule.
Just fine, and you?
So I'm really excited about this new information that I received through my dream. And I tell Denise.
Really?
Uh-huh.
I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it.
Midway.
Pretty neat, eh?
Let's hope. At this point, I think I was thinking, now, we're driving to the transfer station. What is this really going to be like? Getting in a semi of garbage.
As far as I could see, one way or the other, it was garbage. I'm gonna need a pair of gloves.
I'll get you a coat too.
Thanks, Ken. I couldn't even think about what this was gonna be like, smell like.
I thought about critters. If I see a critter, I might be out of there. That might be the end of her support. I'll stand and watch.
And I jumped in the truck right where my dream map told me my bag would be.
Stinky, eh?
Oh, man. Gross. And we started throwing bag after bag after bag of garbage.
How are you doing?
Oh, just ducky.
Oh, my God.
Because of the compaction process, the bags had holes in them. And so as you'd lift the bag, things would drop out.
Diapers, kitty litter. I guess those are the two that really stand out in my mind, other than food.
Oh, man.
Everyone?
Stinky.
I had one focus, and one focus only, and that was to find my garbage bag that contained my ring.
The threesome held their breath and continued searching for the black bag with the white twist tie. And then suddenly, Karen found it, exactly where she'd seen it in her dream.
Oh, I think I found it.
Sure.
Oh.
Find it?
Oh.
But there was a problem that her dream hadn't foretold.
Holes, I think so.
My heart fell when I saw the bag because there was holes all through it.
There are so many holes in here.
And so I went through the bag and there was no ring. And I thought, oh, well, you know, I mean, we sure tried.
It's not here.
And then Ken said no.
It's got to be in there. You got to keep digging. You just have to keep digging.
So I thought, okay. So I went through it slowly this time, paper by paper. Oh, there's a bag. And in the bottom of my big black garbage bag was a little white bag, which was from my Friday night's dinner. And I had had salmon. And I thought, oh, like you smell of fish? I mean, oh, please. And so I it was like I opened the styrofoam container, and there, nestled amongst the fish skin, was my ring.
Oh my gosh, I found my ring!
And I think Denise and Ken were just kind of in disbelief. I don't think they really believed that I was going to find this ring.
All I could think was, oh good, I can get out of here now. And I jumped out quick. I was real happy to be out of the garbage.
And I said, can I take a look at it? And she showed me, and it's got one big diamond with two small diamonds on the sides. And I thought, oh, no wonder you're so concerned about finding this ring. It meant a lot to her.
Even today, Karen can't believe the circumstances surrounding this miraculous incident. Not only in finding the ring, but in finding two people who gave their all to help her out.
I've got a philosophy that don't say no to anybody. Help them out any way you can. It's nice to help people out. And anything for a lady.
It was meant to be that Karen have that ring. That's the only explanation I could come up with. Because it doesn't make sense that you would find a ring in 25 tons of garbage.
When I look back on it, I realized that the story's an analogy of what was going on in my own life. I'd been going through a lot of difficult times. But I realized you have to go through the difficult times to get to the true riches of life. Finding the ring represented the riches that these difficult experiences can teach us. And these jewels come through going through the tons of garbage in our life.
Given the choice, I think I'd rather look for a needle in a haystack than a ring in a trailer of trash, but that's just me. And our three intrepid waste managers have cleaned themselves up, and they join us now from Canmore, Canada. Hello there.
Good evening, Richard.
Good evening, Richard.
Ken, let's start with you. How often have you had to climb down in the muck to retrieve a lost object?
Oh, I think 4 times in the last 5 years.
4 times, huh? And what did you find?
A retainer, some silverware, but nothing this valuable.
Denise, this was your first journey into the wonderful world of refuse. How happy are you that this took place in the winter rather than in the summer?
Very. I think it would be a little smelly in the summer, a little smellier, I should say, because it still smelled.
Yes, I could almost smell the salmon from here. And Karen, how surprised were you that 2 relative strangers would be willing to do this for you?
I was amazed, actually. Denise, without hesitation, not even a time to think about it, really. It was just an instant response to what was happening to me. And Ken, even though he might have thought it was a 1 in a million chances, just never really discouraged me. He did whatever he could do, and then some, really, to help facilitate the whole process. I was truly amazed that there was such a response from people that I didn't even know.
Do you still take your ring off when you go hiking?
Not a chance.
Well, it's a story with a lovely ending, and I want to thank you for sharing it with us. In our next story, a house fire threatens to destroy everything in a family's life, and it might have if one man hadn't been willing to buck the odds and try to save their most precious possession. His valiant efforts were captured on tape, and this video miracle is sure to touch your heart. When San Jose firemen responded to a fire at the home of Edward and Marianne Barrell, they learned that the owners weren't home, but that a pet might be trapped inside.
About 10 minutes into the fire, one of the guys comes up to me and says, "John, there's a dead dog inside the house." And I was looking, there was still a little bit of smoke inside the house, and lo and behold, I see the dog, and I saw it taking a couple gasping for breath. And I just looked, I went, oh my God, and I felt for a pulse, and it had a little bit of a pulse there. So I took it out in front of the house and proceeded to give it mouth to mouth.
The animal was quite old and barely clinging to life, but John knew that this was someone's beloved pet, and so he continued to administer CPR.
I called for other firefighters to bring me some oxygen, and I was breathing it in and then blowing it into the little dog's mouth, hoping that would give it more O2.
That really wasn't doing the trick. So I thought of using a device in our resuscitator that actually forces air into the lungs. Once we placed that device in operation, I could see right away that air exchange was 100% better.
To the Barrows, this dog was part of their family, and I know dogs, I know animals are real important to something. I have my own dog and I have a cat too, and I know they mean a lot to me. So we were working on the dog when Mr. Barrow arrived there, and he was really concerned about what was going on.
Vida had just awakened. It was obvious, at least for the moment, she was going to make it. And she recognized me, I think. The firemen were still putting the house out, things of that sort, doing their job. I focused on the dog, because this was so critical. You lose everything, you still have one thing alive. It's important.
Brad Reynolds was watching from nearby.
And it came to me that this whole thing was the good side of the fire. Them working on the dog and seeing the dog be revived and come around.
We find a lot of animals in houses that are on fire. They become disoriented because of the smoke and, of course, scared. And oftentimes we do find dead animals inside. But fortunately for Vida, she didn't take in enough smoke, and we were able to save her.
Without the fireman's efforts, Vida would not be alive. His efforts were just heroic.
Of all the people in the department, it just had to be John Castro to get involved to make the difference between life and death in a pet. And he's the kind of person that could take a joke about it.
I got numerous phone calls of dear that goes, hey, Captain Kibbles, Captain Dog Breath, I've seen you kiss a lot of dogs in your life. But it was worth it. I mean, it was all worth it. I just did what I thought was the right thing to do and saved a dog.
And performed a small miracle. Well, that's our show for now. Thank you for joining us, and a special thanks to all the people who shared their remarkable stories on It's a Miracle. It's our hope that whenever you need one, you'll find a miracle in your life too. Until next time, I'm Richard Thomas. Goodbye.